wanted to model what it looks like to read in multiple passes because some people are still struggling with what you do on each pass. And so I want to model the way that I would approach this poem. It's a very short poem on page 15 in your reader in multiple passes with a preview. So let's start with a preview. I'm going to scan over the poem for 30 seconds and just write down what I notice on a very first look through of the poem. Okay, so I notice I've done 30 seconds of scanning. Right away I noticed geography lesson. Then I've got some schema around geography lesson. I took geography in 9th grade and in high school. And so this makes me think of like countries, maps, maybe memorization. It was kind of a boring class. I know that geography is like where countries are. We had to memorize maps of like all the different continents. I've never heard of this person before. I don't know anything about them. I can't even tell. Chris could be a man's name or a woman's name or like a non-binary person's name. So Chris is a pretty neutral name. And then I noticed right away that this word shows up 2 times that I don't know. So in my scan, this word stood out. It's capitalized. I just don't know it, so I'm circling it. And then I noticed that this is a poem from a collection of poems by this person in 2004. So right away, I'm making this prediction that it's going to be something about countries, maps, memorization, maybe where countries are. And I know right away that there's this word that I don't know that's in there. Now I'm going to do my first pass. And again, the first pass, there's 2 types of questions that we write down. Questions that we want to clarify, and also questions that are hypotheses, like is it about this? Is it about that? And so you can kind of approach it from either direction. What I can figure out, even though I don't understand everything, or what's really confusing and just trying to surface everything that's confusing. I'm going to do a little bit of both. Okay, so I'm starting at the beginning. I've already made my prediction what it's going to be about, something about countries where they are. So I'm going to read the first line and see both what I have questions about because I'm confused and what I can guess is going on. To the Ipo, everybody is family, everything is connected, grandmother explained. So right away I'm noticing that that grandmother is capitalized, and when I think about grandmother capitalized like that and just this like who's grandmother, I don't know. When I think about like grandmother with a capital G and it's just like that's all you need to know, it makes me think of like Mulan and Moana, where you have these like wise old figures, wise old woman. So already I'm getting this picture of grandmother as this wise old woman because it connects to movies that I've seen. And it says grandmother explained, which makes me think that this first thing, even though there's no quotation marks, it makes me think that this must be something that grandmother is saying. So I'm going to read it again. To the Igbo, everyone is family, everything is connected, grandmother explained. Okay, so this is something that grandmother is saying. And that makes sense. Everyone is family, everything is connected. Now I'm in my like Disney movie place. This makes me think of Lion King. I'm making a schema connection to that with like the circle of life. Right, that the whole world is like one circle. Okay, so I get that. That feels like a very wise old woman thing to say. Okay, next line. Like the weave of this raffia mat, we intertwine. See, this is the world too there, and there's that word again. Okay, it doesn't have quotation marks, but again, this seems like something that grandmother is saying, that she's continuing, right? Because it's like she's going back to like this is the world to these people, and she started with that. So I'm guessing that this is still grandmother. So I'm going to label. I can guess that this is grandmother is speaking. Okay. And then there's words that I didn't know here. I don't know what raffia is. A raffia mat. I know what a mat is. It's like a placemat, but I don't know what a raffia mat is. So I need to figure that out. Intertwine, I get enough. Like intertwine means like that they're connected. I'll switch that out to an easier word. So like we connect together. And that goes back to, it says like the weave, connect together. When I imagine intertwining, it kind of looks like weaving. So that's kind of a connection within there. Okay, so far I've got the grandmother is talking about everyone is family. and the way the world is, and I don't know what this word is. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Nodding, the German anthropologist, okay, right away, that's a word I don't know. Okay, nodding, the German anthropologist licked her pencil in concentration and wrote, to the Igbo, the world is flat like a mat. Okay, so right away I'm catching, she wrote this down. Okay, so the German anthropologist, whatever that is, wrote this last line down. And she's nodding. So if she's nodding, that makes me think that she's like nodding in response to the grandmother. So I guess she's like communicating with the grandmother. So it's almost like the grandmother said something and then the German anthropologist nods. And then it says she licked her pencil in concentration. Like, that seems really weird. I have a question. Who does this? Is that a metaphor? I'm going to imagine it. So I'm holding this Apple Pencil in my hand. I'm going to like lick it in concentration and then write. So I guess I can kind of picture her actually. So this German, whatever an anthropologist is, I can picture if she's like a German woman, here she is, and she's like holding a pencil like this. Here's a pencil. This is her hand. Yeah. Okay. And she's like licking it like this. And then she's like concentrating. She's thinking really hard. Here, she's got hair. Sweet. And then she's like writing on this paper. So I can picture her. It says she licked her pencil in concentration. So I guess she's like really focused. And she writes down this thing, to the Igbo, the world is flat like a mat. Okay, so, and again, here's this word. So it's pretty clear that for my second pass, I need to go look up what Igbo is. I need to know what anthropologist is. But I'm going to try to get what I've gotten so far in my gist. So for this first pass, I can tell there are two key people, right? So I've got the grandmother, and I've got the German anthropologist, and I can tell that they are talking together. They both are talking about the world, right? This is the world to the Igbo. The world is flat like a mat. So they're talking together about the world. And I know that the German person like writes at the end. So I'm guessing it's kind of like an interview. Now, as I'm picturing this, it feels like the German person is like interviewing the grandma and then writes down what she says. So that's what I've got so far. I'm going to go do some research and then I'll come back for my second round. Okay, I want to start my second round by adding my notes that I've researched. So I looked up Igbo, and I found it right away. That is like a native people of Nigeria, which is a country in Africa. It's also the language those people speak. Okay, and I found that right away just by searching for Igbo. So this is like a language or native people in Africa. So that's kind of connecting back, if I think about it, to geography lesson, right? That like this is like a different country. We've got the Germans, and then here is like, this is like a Nigerian person. So I can see that I've got people from two different countries. The other thing that I looked up was an anthropologist, and I looked that up on the Cambridge Dictionary. And it didn't have anthropologist, but it had anthropology. Anthropology is the science of human culture. So an anthropologist is somebody who studies the science of human culture. So if I'm going to chunk that now, I've got the German anthropologist. I'm guessing that that means that it's a scientist from Germany who is studying culture. And based on the fact that she's, it seems like she's doing an interview with this grandmother about the Igbo, I think she's studying the Igbo culture. So now that kind of helps me figure out my visualization more. I have my German anthropologist licking her pencil, and I feel like she's interviewing now this like old woman. So she's going to be like an old woman. I can't draw it all. So she's got some hair. Let's give her an ear. She's got an eye. We'll give her glasses because she's old. Sweet. Okay. So she's like interviewing this like grandmother. Oh, grandmother. Okay, she's interviewing her um, about culture. And this grandmother is Igbo. This anthropologist is German. Okay, so now I can visualize what's going on here, and I'm going to read it again. So I'm imagining now the German anthropologist interviewing this old grandmother. So I'm going to do it in the grandmother's voice to help me imagine it. To the Igbo, everyone is family. Everything is connected, grandmother explained. Like the weave of this raffia mat, we intertwine, see? This is the world to the Igbo. Okay, so what I'm picturing when she says like the weave of this raffia mat, now that I'm picturing it, I'm picturing her, I'm going to write down, this is a visualization. I'm picturing the grandmother like holding her hands up and interweaving her fingers. Grandmother linking her fingers. So what I'm seeing is that she's trying to explain to the German anthropologist, she's saying this is the world to the Igbo. She's trying to explain her culture, her culture's view of the world. She's trying to explain that to this German person who's studying her culture. That's what I think is going on here. So I'm imagining her like holding up her fingers and saying, okay, we intertwine. And now that I think about that, everyone is family, everything is connected. On my second pass, my reaction is like, what a beautiful way to see the world. What a beautiful way to see the world. This idea that one person is connected to another, that feels like there's like a lot of love, there's a lot of care, maybe that they're connected to the environment. That sounds really lovely that we connect together. I also looked up raffia, and I saw that raffia is like kind of like a straw. And then I looked up actually a picture of a raffia mat, and so it's like a straw mat that's woven, which means it looks like this. I looked at pictures of this on Google Images. So that helps me think about, she's saying, like she says that everyone is family, where like the weave of this raffia mat, I'm going to connect that back to the way that she sees the world. I'll add that over here. She sees that like everyone affects and is connected to everyone else. So she's saying that everyone is family, everyone is connected together like a mat. That's the way that the Igbo see the world. Okay, now I'm reading. So the German anthropologist nods. She's communicating with the grandmother. If you nod, I think it's like that you understand, right? You nod when you either agree, so she understands, or she agrees, or else she'd shake her head, right? So she nods. The German anthropologist licked her pencil in concentration, so she's really focused. And so here I'm thinking like she's trying to write down what the grandmother said. She's focused, and so either like she wants to get it right, I think. Wants to get it right. Oops, wants to write it right. She wants to get it right. Maybe she thinks it's really important, right, if she's really focused. Maybe she's sure she has it right. Has it right? And she writes down, to the Igbo, the world is flat like a mat. And so what I'm recognizing is, like, she is writing that to the Igbo, so, like, if I'm going to paraphrase this line, she's writing for the Igbo, which are, like, of Nigeria. She is saying they think the world is flat. Okay, and what I'm noticing is that she's talking about how the Igbo see the world, and the grandmother is talking about how the Igbo see the world. But the grandmother is saying that like they're connected like a mat, and here she's saying they're flat like a mat. And what I'm noticing is that is different from what the grandmother said. Okay. So now I think I can get my gist here. So now I'm noticing that there's like this interview, and what I figured out now is the grandmother is explaining Igbo culture to the anthropologist. I'm going to say that grandmother says world is connected. But then what happens is the anthropologist records world is flat. So now I'm starting to see that there's a conflict between what the grandmother is saying and what the anthropologist is writing down. Okay, third round now. I'm going to try to put this together and think about why this matters. Here we go. So I'm switching to red for my third round. Okay, round 3. Okay, so I've got to the Igbo, everyone is family, everything is connected, grandmother explained. And so, like, if I think about what I get from this, that feels like a beautiful view of the world. I already said that. Like the weave of this raffia mat, we intertwine, see, this is the world of the Igbo. I feel like I got that. Okay. Okay, now the German anthropologist looked at her pencil in concentration, wrote to the Igbo, the world is flat like a mat. Now all of a sudden I'm noticing, okay, not only does she misunderstand, but she's saying the world is flat. And if I think about my schema of people who think the world is flat, and I'm sorry if this is you, that is like an old, wrong, stupid way to see the world. Maybe not stupid, maybe just ignorant, that you don't know stuff. So what I'm noticing is the grandmother explained the world in a way that sounds really beautiful, but flat like a mat to me sounds negative. And so now I'm noticing that the German anthropologist is misunderstanding the grandmother. That's not what she said, right? So I'm going to add that so that it's different. I'm going to put that it's a misunderstanding. But I feel like it's a misunderstanding that shows some prejudice now that I'm thinking about it. That it feels like the German anthropologist is like, well, of course this old woman from Nigeria doesn't know stuff, and of course she thinks that the world is flat. And what's funny is, like, I'm going to go back. So on my second pass, she's saying the world is connected, and the German anthropologist is thinking she thinks the world is flat. And those are two totally different ideas. And now I'm going to make a connection to ethnic studies. I'm thinking about who has power here, right? Here I have this European. She's from Germany. She's a scientist. Then I have this like old woman from Africa. The German anthropologist is the one who's doing the writing. I'm thinking about who's going to read this writing. This is like going to be like in a book, or it's going to get published. And all of a sudden I'm realizing that the story that this European scientist is going to tell about the Igbo people from Nigeria is not the story that they said. So I'm making this connection to ethnic studies, single story, and also hegemony, right? Because her version of this story is going to become the version that everybody reads and everybody thinks is normal. And it's not fair. She's portraying this Nigerian grandmother as being stupid and thinking that the world is flat, when the grandmother is trying to say that everybody is connected and everybody should care about each other. So now I'm going to put my gist for my last round. I'm going to say that the anthropologist misunderstands and misrepresents the beliefs of the Igbo grandmother. She portrays them as ignorant about the world. And as I'm writing this, I'm feeling the irony, right? That it's like she's saying they don't understand the world, but really it's the German anthropologist who is misunderstood. So I'm going to say irony that the scientist is the one who misunderstood, but her version is the one others will read / believe. because she has authority, because she's a scientist, because she's the person who's going to publish the book. So now I'm thinking that the point of this poem is something about the ways that things are represented. I'm going to write that in black down here at the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to put, here's my gist. I'm going to say that this poem is about representation and cultural prejudice and I'm going to say, even though the scientist doesn't mean to, right? I get the sense that she's really trying to understand. She is enacting and perpetuating her prejudice against this people she considers like backward, that they don't really get stuff. Okay, and that's my 3 passes of this poem. I've ended up with a gist that I feel really good about.